Love music. Live sport. Talking football with Bill Young and Ali Graham on RockSport Radio.
Good evening. We're halfway through the week. It's Talking Football with Bill Young and Ali Graham with you until 8 o'clock tonight. Don't forget, broadcasting across central Scotland on DAB digital radio, online and via your smartphone. If you're using an iPhone, you can listen to us on the TuneIn app. If you're using an Android phone, you can use the TuneIn app or the Radiogram app. You can also listen online at rocksportradio.co.uk, and you can watch the programme live on Facebook, Twitter and Periscope. And a busy show it is tonight as well, Mr. Graham.
Yep, brilliant. Love it.
Kris Doolan coming on shortly to tell us about
Magic.
The ghost goal.
And it brought back memories of the old stuff years ago with Mottram and all that, didn't it? You know, I don't know if you've spoke about that, but he changed the face of goalposts.
That's true, yeah.
Mottram, because the stanchion at the back got taken away and it was the net.
Yeah, they were called, but they've been using those. We were the ones that were using those stanchions at the back. The Europeans had been using the way they are now. At the time.
Yep.
So we changed to what they called European standard goal nets.
Yeah.
So, yes, I remember.
Paddy Conley scalps it and it comes back out. It's brilliant. Everybody must have went on.
Picks up.
See, the thing is with Kris scoring that goal, right? Not even Partick Thistle supporters, Bill. I mean, everybody must have went onto YouTube to look at that goal again. Well, you see me Jim's face running down the tunnel with Paul Sturrock.
I've looked at it 4 times and I just,
It's just mind boggles. How? I mean, what was he thinking?
I don't know.
I mean, and he was a top referee at the time. I think he was one of the top guys at the time. My goodness, honestly.
He was indeed. Anyway, we'll be talking to Kris Doolan about that very shortly. If you're a Jags fan, stand by for that. We'll also talk to him about last season and where the Jags have started and got off to this season. Stuart Taylor was first team coach of Paul Lambert at Aston Villa, an assistant to Lambert at Stoke. We'll be talking to Stuart and asking him whether the managers actually get a fair crack of the whip and given enough time to actually turn things round at teams. So we'll be doing that. We'll also speak to Jeanette Findlay from the Celtic Trust tonight about that crush that happened at Celtic Park, and you'll never guess what people are saying could be the cause of it. And we'll talk about it a wee bit later on. That's with Jeanette Findlay from the Celtic Trust. We'll also be talking to Matthew Elder from the Fife Free Press. Barry Smith quitting Raith Rovers when they're at the top of the table. Now,
with the bonnet,
Why has he decided to do that? Barry said he'll come on and tell us next week, as will Ray McKinnon talk to us about why and how it all came about to go to Falkirk. Acrimonious, to say the least, I have to say, Ali. The chairman of Morton issuing a statement today, which was pretty veiled in its criticism of Ray, it has to be said, but it does seem as if Ray's departure has left a bad taste in Inverclyde.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's great. You know, when we leave here, me always have a wee laugh and a joke about the managers. We've spoken about it for a wee while, Bill, haven't we? Start the season, who would be first? I said Barry Smith would get away with it after coming back to win that game against Airdrie, 2 goals in 90.
But Barry's resigned.
He did resign, but I know that, and I couldn't. I says that's probably saved him, and then he chucks it. The Ray McKinnon thing. I just think when I leave this show on a Wednesday night,
Stubbsy,
things are going to be taking place at the weekend again for me coming back here next week.
Going as well.
Incredible, absolutely
Paul
incredible.
Hartley.
Yeah, I think they were all. The only one I predicted is Chris's gaffer Archie. I thought maybe he'd be under a wee bit of pressure, but we did mention the rest of them, and we have mentioned the rest of them would be under a bit of pressure. But see, the one that really interests me is the St Mirren thing, where with Stubbs, and I know they've not got off to a good start, but there's this belief that they were wanting to finish in the top 6. I mean, I never ever wore that, Bill. I
heard the story the other day, which came from a very, very good source, which I'll tell you after the show, and everybody will start, here we go again, he's not telling anybody. I can't tell you this one, but I'll tell you after the show as to what I heard the cause was.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something after the show as well then,
well,
right?
yeah.
Aye, but I'm actually in fact, I'll tell you now, I'm actually a drummer.
No, you're a dauber.
Well, man, that's terrible, honestly. And you know how I'm a drummer, Bill. Right? We'll not say any more about that, right? There you go.
So,
no, so really, the St Mirren thing, did they set the bar too high? I don't know the expectation levels.
You've got Stubbsy away, you've got Paul Hartley away, you've got Ray away, and you've got Barry Smith resigned.
Yeah.
The one that I think is probably next on the hit list, depending on what happens after the break.
Did United?
No.
Is he doing well now?
No, I don't know that he's doing well, but I think he's doing okay. It's got to be wee McCann, surely.
Yeah, he's one of the names that we mentioned as well.
So, we'll see what's what. Anyway, let's not talk about things like that. Let's talk about things...
like goals.
There you go. If you can't say it, don't bloody say it on the radio. You're such a bam. Thank you. Let's move on and talk football properly now. And it was a weird weekend because, of course, there was all the controversy about the Rogic-Jack interlude, the Alan McGregor back kick. There was the sending off at Aberdeen of Mikey Devlin. But the weirdest thing of the whole weekend, Kris Doolan, you take the biscuit.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm still recovering slightly.
Well, at least you're a wee bit richer because the club have given you your goal scoring bonus.
Well, I donated that to charity.
Good man.
I'm not taking that.
Good man. Kris, it was the weirdest thing. I mean, it really was when you look back at it. And still, and I had an ex-referee on last night. I had Charlie Richmond on last night talking to us. And he tried to give us an explanation for it, saying that the ball had gone out of play and the linesman had flagged. The referee hadn't seen him. The linesman had put his flag down again. But then someone later on pointed out that a corner was then taken. So...
Game's taking place again.
What was the explanation given to you?
I mean, the actual decision came because when the ball hits the net, it ricochets back out. It bounces around the net a couple of times. It bounces out, and the Morton boy kicks it away in a rage, and that's what flies. It flies out to the touchline, right next to the linesman, and he's obviously just seen the ball coming out, and he's assumed that it's just been cleared. And the game should restart for a throw-in, but he didn't actually realise that the ball had already been in the back of the net. And the player kicked the ball away in a rage. It wasn't even clear. He's kicked it away, shouting and swearing, while the rest of his teammates walked back to the halfway line.
So Kris, was the linesman no up with play then when you put the ball in the net? Was he no up with play? Was he still jogging?
No, he is.
He was watching Sky Sports on his phone.
He's waiting on Kris Doolan to score and he missed it.
He's actually standing at the 6-yard line. He's looking across the line, and obviously offside line. But my opinion would be, surely even at your peripheral vision, you could see the net bulging.
Yeah.
Because it bulged twice, to be honest. I hit the side net and the back of the net, and then came back out. So, I mean, to me, it was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. I've never been involved in anything as insane as that before.
So how did the referee end up making that decision? I mean, surely he must have been up with play.
I'm watching it again right now, right? I'm watching it as we speak at the minute. And when the ball comes in from a corner, it's headed goalwards and it bounces about and it comes out to you. But the linesman jogs out to where you are, 10 yards, and you struck it into the net. It then comes out, he's then on the corner flag, and the ball gets booted up the park, and he starts to run up the park again. Then he puts his flag up and points towards the corner flag again. So, do you know what I mean? He's made the mistake. He has made the mistake there. He left when you struck it to where you are, maybe 12 yards out, and then the ball's flew in, and he's trying to jog to the corner flag to see if it's what's happening, and then it's been cleared. So I can't understand why he hasn't seen the ball hitting the back of the net. Can't understand.
I told you, he had his mobile phone, he was watching Sky Sports.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
I think the referee was going to give the goal, as you would expect, because you can see the net, and then he was kind of not overruled by the linesman, but the linesman brought it to his attention that he hadn't seen the ball cross the line, and that's why we ended up restarting from a throw-in. So, I mean, it was just completely bizarre.
Right. But Kris, he's only, and I don't mean only, but he is only the assistant referee. Surely the referee would rule other people, overrule them in other situations. I mean, there was the argument that John Beaton was shouting foul, foul, foul for the Rogic-Jack incident, and Willie Collum, quite rightly, who is closer, makes a decision on it. It wouldn't be the first time a referee's overruled a linesman.
No, not at all. And, I think rightly so, because at the end of the day, referee's in charge of the game, and the linesmen and the fourth official are there to help out in any kind of tricky situations. So at the end of the day, I would expect the referee to take the onus, and if he can see or not see that. But I mean, everybody in the stadium knew the ball was in the net, and I think the referee would have known. But then it was brought to his attention that the linesman didn't think it had crossed the line, and he decided to change his mind.
Now here's an interesting one. Has anybody said anything to you since then?
No, we've not heard a single thing. I thought we might have heard something along the lines of even an explanation as to why, but I've not heard anything for the club, and I'd imagine if anybody contacted the club, I would have heard by now, but as of yet, no explanation at all.
There's actually a still that I've seen as well, Kris, of the linesman maybe a yard from the corner flag looking across, and the ball that you've struck is on its way out, but it's still 1.5 foot, 2 foot over the line. Have you seen that still?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I actually think that's when it's on its way in.
All right, okay.
It hits the bar, it bounces down. Then it hits the side netting, the back of the net.
Was it the spin you put on it, Kris? Was it too much spin?
It was one of those intentional ones. But it shows you how far over the line. It wasn't even debatable whether it was over the line. It actually hits the back of the net.
It does. I'm watching it just now. And the referee's not that far for you where you've struck it, so he's looking right at it as well. The referee's standing next to him.
Has to have seen it, the referee.
He's got to have seen the ball getting in.
I don't get it. I really don't get it. Anyway, look, somebody sent in a tweet, because we get tweets when we've got guests on and things like this, and here's the tweet that's come in for tonight. So it says, it's the worst decision by a referee I have ever seen, but when you have an SFA that is inept at their job, how do you expect the people they hire to referee to do the job? Disgraceful is an understatement. Why do these people get away with blunders like this? I don't expect you to comment on it, Kris, but I just thought I'd read it out for you.
The thing is as well, Bill and Kris, he struck that. That could be in another game where it could have been a semi-final to get in somewhere, a promotion chasing game, Kris, where, I'm not saying that goal isn't important. Of course it is, all goals are important, but, really, really crucial goal. And the officials have missed it,
I completely agree, and I think I said before, it was, we fell into the playoffs and the coming out of the Premier League there, but due to one goal. Yeah. And that's what we had a 1 goal difference. Yeah. And that put us in the playoffs, and inevitably we fell out of the Premier League. So it shows you that every goal, for and against, is a prisoner throughout a full season. And I just hope it doesn't come back to bite him.
Well, did you go up the road and did you go into YouTube and did you look at that one that Paddy Connolly had scored all the years ago in the exact same goal to see what had happened there?
It's the exact same, it's the exact same goal and the exact same goal. It was completely insane as well.
The only difference is, Kris, one of their defenders didn't pick the ball up and then kick it off his goalkeeper. Absolutely brilliant.
I take it Archie must have gone and seen the referee afterwards and had some kind of conversation with him.
I think the manager probably assumed we would hear from somebody at the SFA, and he's kind of let it be just now, because we went on, we won the game, which was the most important thing. We've won the game. It hasn't cost us anything, but I think the manager just expects maybe to hear some kind of explanation or something along those lines. But I don't think he went in demanding any explanation straight after the game.
Before we move on to other things, here's the plus point of the whole thing. No matter what happens in the rest of your life, when you're an old man like me and Ali, you'll be able to sit down with your grandkids and say, look at this. This is what your papa did. And then you can say, and then they never gave it, swines. How are you feeling about the start to the season?
I think now, after the transfer window closing, I think that the squad now looks healthier. I think up until that point we were struggling to fill the bench for players and things along that kind of line. But, I think now we've got a settled squad. We had a bit of a rocky start in the first game or two, but we've put in some good performances recently. And against Morton there, we've picked up another good 3 points. So hopefully it's a sign of things to come.
Was the rocky start due to maybe just a kind of hangover from the relegation, Kris, or did you because I presume you would prepare properly for the cup games and things, but was it just a wee kind of hangover and thinking we should maybe still be in the Premier League?
I think a lot of we're trying to rebuild a full squad. it wasn't just a couple of players. We had to rebuild 14, 15 players coming in, and I think it was still taking its time. We used the cup effectively. We took it very seriously, and we didn't tinker with things. We tried to make sure we were professional in every game, and I think just going into the season, we just didn't get off to the perfect start because we were still bedding players in and finding the best way for us to play. But I think now, like I say, that we have that kind of settled team, and we've also added some good signings, and we've now got a healthy squad. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the season now.
So what makes Kris Doolan tick then, Kris? I mean, that's 10 years nearly, I presume a testimonial year, whatever. I don't know what's happening there, but every season you've delivered, you're scoring the goals. What makes you still happy to be there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a club that I say all the time, it's a club that I love.
Yeah.
Because they gave me a chance in professional football, and I've shown loyalty. The club had stuck by me as well, and I think it's players jump around teams sometimes to find a club that they fit in it, and you'll see it, your teams players will do well at one team and they'll move on to another club and it just won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't always just be that on the pitch or they've turned into bad players. There's things off the pitch that can add to that. And I think at Thistle I just fit in, and I feel as if it fits in with my life.
Yeah.
So I think I'm happy and I'm content, and that's when I play best. Is when I'm happy and I'm smiling, I'm enjoying it. And that's what I've done probably for day one at Thistle, to be honest.
Clear up a wee mystery for us if you can, because last season Ali was a little bit bemused, I was bemused, Murdo was bemused, Hughie Burns was bemused, Davy McKinnon was bemused, how you were in one week and then out the next week kind of thing. I mean, what was there a reason for that? Were you not 100% fit? Was there something that you can't talk about, or what? Because it was a strange one, because everybody kept saying week after week after week, why is he not playing Kris Doolan? And then you'd play and then you would be away again, and we just never got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year I had a knee injury. I had quite a severe knee injury, and it probably ruled me out for months. But at that point in the season, we didn't have the luxury of the big squad where I could just sit out the team. So I tried to make myself as available as I possibly could. I had to be really careful. We thought I was going for surgery in my knee, and it went on 3-4 months. I was probably really, really struggling, but I managed to just keep myself ticking over as best I could. And eventually, when I was supposed to have surgery, the surgeon didn't think I'd needed surgery. So we went down another kind of physiotherapy route, and now my knee's 100% recovered, and I managed to get through it without going for the surgery. So, but it did take that kind of time. So I'd imagine, I was in and out of the team, but that kind of played a big part in it, especially last season, just because my knee injury was quite severe.
I was just going to ask you as well, Kris, there was a couple of raised eyebrows at some of the guys who left the club during closed season. Were you surprised at the shake-up that there was? Because, of course, there was a big bit of trumpet blowing and drum banging about Thistle were going to keep a Premier League budget down in the Championship, which everybody applauded them for and thought, right thing to do, get back up again, have a big budget and move forward. And then certain players that we thought probably could be key to that exited the club.
Yeah, I know, and I think it was down to the manager's decision for that reason. There's a lot of players he felt that he wanted to clear out for one reason or another, and he wanted that fresh start. I think he spoke about it at the end of last season, over the close season, that being in the Championship now was a fresh start. And I think, he's cleared the decks of, like I say, 14, 15 players. And that's how it feels. It does feel that way around the club, but it is a fresh start, so we have to treat it like that. And that's what the full season's about now. So I could see why the manager cleared a lot of players for different reasons. And the players he's brought in, they will take time to gel together. But like I said, I feel as if now boys are starting to settle in to the club, and hopefully we'll start enjoying it the same way I do.
Does that mean, Kris, then that you're maybe getting adapted to the Championship and you're maybe changing the style of play that you maybe had last season?
Yeah, I think so. I think the 5 years when we won the league, it was all about staying in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And there'll be a lot of teams there this year who will be the exact same. It's all about staying there as long as you can. So the football sometimes isn't as entertaining as you would like it to be, and we understand that. But again, it's down to results. Now we're in the Championship. We're trying to put together a kind of style of play that will get people to come and watch along with those results. So we're hoping that we can put the two together and try and get back up as quickly as possible.
One of the things I was going to ask you, Kris, is about just the level of competition in the Championship. Now, for the last 4 seasons, it's been very competitive, but I think we're all agreed here that this season is the most competitive that the Championship's ever been, because in any given day, you think that any team can beat any other team.
Yeah, I would agree. If you look around the full division, there's a lot of big teams there who, probably rightly so, regard themselves Premier League, and they'll all be expecting, hoping, wishing to get back as quickly as possible. So I think you look around the division, it's probably the toughest division to get out of. Mm-hmm. And it's got that reputation for a reason, because it definitely is going to be the toughest to get out of.
I couldn't call 1, 2, 3 or 4, to be honest with you.
No,
Ali, I really couldn't.
The last couple of seasons, especially this season now.
I think this is the hardest season that I can remember the Championship for a long time.
I think probably, Kris and Bill, that it's probably the hardest, because there's probably 4 or 5 teams for a change that think they can get in there and maybe challenge and even win it.
And maybe have the kind of budgets that would allow them to challenge.
Yeah, whereas before it's maybe 2 or 3 teams that were really going for it. But now there's about 4 or 5 in there, and even the start that Queen of the South have had to the season, Kris, as well. I mean, your man Dobby's banging in the goals all over the place. You've got Ayr United sitting mid-table just above you, as with Shanklin banging in the goals. So you need to get the finger out and start banging in the goals, son. That's what you need to do.
As you say, I mean, across the field division...
Chris, sorry to interrupt you. His problem's no scoring them, it's getting them kept on the score sheet.
That's right, exactly. I should have said that.
Sorry, go on, Chris, you were saying.
Everybody across the full division, every team probably has groups of players who they think are good enough to play in the Premiership. And, as going back to not being able to guess the top 4, that's down to those teams who, like I say, wish, hope, think they're Premiership teams, with bigger budgets, with trying to attract bigger, better players. But I think that's what makes the full division entertaining and, as I say, really difficult to get out of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, good luck for the rest of the season, and thanks for coming on and talking to us tonight, Kris. Been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Kris.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thank
Kris
you.
Doolan there, Partick Thistle, talking to us tonight about the famous ghost goal. And other things as well.
He's done well to keep his calm throughout the whole thing, but you've got right off your nut.
Listen, I'd be taking hostages if it was
imagine
me.
That guy. Can you imagine that linesman and the referee going for a pint after the game, and guys going like that to him? Oh, come here, have a wee word with you, mate. What happened there?
I would literally be taking hostages if it was me. I really would. I mean, you just look at it and you think, how could the referee not give? How could the referee not give it?
Know what they should do, Bill? Know what they should do? Next season, or when that referee comes again, if he ever does referee in our Partick Thistle game, put the nets about 400 yards behind the goal, so that the ball can be seen hitting the back of the blooming thing,
Or far enough back that it can't come back out again.
Absolutely.
It's crazy stuff. Listen, we'll talk to Stuart Taylor soon. First team coach with Paul Lambert at Aston Villa and assistant to Lambert at Stoke City. That's coming up, and we're talking about that on the back of the managerial merry-go-round that's been happening over the last week. That's all to come on RockSport, talking football.
Love music, live sport, talking football with Bill Young and Ali Graham on RockSport Radio.
Okay, it's Wednesday. Don't forget that means that Lewis Stewart's up from 8 o'clock tonight, and he's here with the line out. If you're a rugby fan, there is no better rugby programme anywhere on the radio. International football, of course, a big talking point. Mr. Graham, Shelley Kerr and her ladies team doing extremely well, in fact magnificently, last night to qualify for the World Cup. It looked a wee bit dodgy at one point, didn't it?
I think everything looked dodgy. I think they were just really kind of dragged them down to their level. The part wasn't the best. The passing wasn't.
Terrible part.
But I watched it, and you know what? Well done, fantastic, great. That's it. This is what they need to do, because if we can't qualify for it, then we'll be supporting the women's team. So fantastic, absolutely.
And of course, we'll be playing them next week, next Tuesday, isn't it? Albania.
Yeah.
In the new Nations League.
The new Nations League.
Whatever that is.
Well, it's the stop friendlies, isn't it? It's just
yeah, it's the stop friendly. So we're having a friendly on Friday with Belgium.
Belgium, aye. Brilliant.
What's your thoughts on this Nation League? And
try to read into it, Bill.
I mean, look, if you look at it properly, we've got probably quite an easy run.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
I tried to read into it, and it was kind of. I got halfway through it, and to be quite honest, I lost kind of interest because
it numbs your brain. It's
absolutely
like eating ice cream quickly. You get brain
teams
freeze.
for the fourth tier trying to get into these competitions, where I think teams for that, the weird teams, have been beaten, like Iceland anyway. So, it was a wee bit. I don't know, but if it's going to get people in, they need to try and attract it to get people into Hampden. Is it still going to be Hampden? We don't even know that yet, because that's disappeared.
Well, no, because that again is, don't forget there was an ultimatum, a 7-day time ultimatum.
Is that last Tuesday?
Something like that. Put in saying that Hampden and Murrayfield must have clarification and completion of bids, and they must have asked them specific questions, I dare say.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's all good. It's what I was talking about last night, Ali. It takes me back to the time it's taken to appoint a chief exec for Stuart Regan going, the time it took to appoint a national team manager.
Yeah.
Everything now seems to take an age to make a decision at the SFA for some reason, and I don't know why, and I've given up trying to think about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I can't get my head around it either, but we get the friendly over with, then we go and play Albania, and we just need to take it for there, because all the teams involved in Europe anyway, aren't they? So, I'll see what happens. I'll see if I want any fancy. I maybe go along, or I might not, but we'll see.
What's your thoughts on Andy Robertson as a captain?
Brilliant. I've been watching him.
Ali McCoy saying that Andy Robertson could become a legend like Kenny Dalglish for Scotland. And
for Liverpool. The fans are chanting his name every game. He made the goal again. His determination. I think he done a John Alumu over the top of the guy. He set up Mane's goal at the weekend. Just brilliant going down the left side. Absolutely brilliant. He seems to cut backs, whipped in, anything, any delivery. He's got it in his locker. And I think he's actually learning a wee bit defensively as well, Bill. I think he's getting better at that as well. So, great appointment making him captain, and he deserves it, because I like to see Scottish players doing well down in England, especially in the Premiership, and he's actually making me watch Liverpool, who are an exciting team, but he's there because he's an exciting fullback, and he's setting up chances for the wonderful strikers that they've got. So I think it's brilliant. Well done. Ex-Queen's Park player, ex-Queen's Park.
It really is a good accolade as well for him.
Yeah, brilliant. His family must be delighted,
Of course,
brilliant.
Of course, yeah. Right. We were talking earlier on about this management merry-go-round that's been happening over the last week. Paul Lambert, Ray McKinnon leaving Morton, Paul Lambert leaving Falkirk, Alan Stubbs leaving St Mirren, Barry Smith leaving Wraith Rovers, 2 of their own volition, 2 enforced. We were talking last night to a couple of people about this, and I was talking also to Jerry Collins about it. And Jerry was saying that clubs should be obliged to, if they sign a manager on a 2-year contract, they should be obliged to let that manager see those 2 years out. Let's speak to somebody who knows more about probably the management game than Ali and I put together, and that's Stuart Taylor, first team coach of Paul Lambert at Aston Villa and assistant to Paul at Stoke City. Stuart, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Nice. Good. Stuart, it seems to be that you put an argument forward for clubs being fairer to managers and giving them more of a time, and then Barry Smith resigns and Ray McKinnon resigns and goes to Falkirk, and then everybody starts saying, well, hang on a minute, how can you blame the club for doing what they do if managers walk away from jobs like that?
Yeah, I think there's so many different factors to each individual case. You've got things that go on behind the scenes, personality clashes within the club, might be budgets, it might just be that the manager's not doing well. But there are so many different factors. I don't think you can tie all the cases together as being the same. So I think that it's one of those ones that, yes, managers do walk away because they're maybe asking for certain demands If maybe budget's been increased or maybe budgets have been decreased, and they're asking to have a certain percentage back of that budget. It might even be something a little bit kind of less than that, maybe not so severe. So I think all the cases are different, and hence the reason why managers walk away and people think, why are they doing that? And then obviously managers get sacked that they try and hold on to their job and take the budget cuts, or whatever the case may be. But I'm certainly not about the managers that have walked away or been sacked, this season up in Scotland. I'm not talking about those cases. I'm just talking about, in general.
It seems to me, though, that the two that have been sacked, particularly Alan Stubbs and Paul Hartley, I mean, without actually giving any kind of thought on it directly, when you look at the amount of games we're into a brand new season, how the hell can anybody make a judgment on where the team's going to finish up at the end of the season this early on in the season? Every manager and every team want to get off to a good start. But at the end of the day, we saw last season a couple of teams in the Scottish Premiership who had good starts, petered away in the middle of the season, found themselves near the bottom of the league, and then had a wee bit of a rally. And it happened in the Championship. Inverness Cally Thistle, with Robbo being a good example of that. Surely you've got to give them more than 4, 5, 6, 7 games.
Yeah, I think it's looking at the bigger picture and actually being involved in the. I think for me the biggest scenario was down at Fulham, where Jukanovic had went into around about October, November time, and he was always flirting about the relegation zone, which is unusual for a club like Fulham. And then he found a formula, he found a way to win. He kept with his philosophy and his ideas that he's strong with. And he started winning games, but it wasn't just a case of unbeaten games where a run of unbeaten games where he was drawing every couple and then winning one. He was actually winning every single game back to back. He then went on that winning run, and the belief from the chairman, rather than to sack him at that time, he stuck with him, and they've got the ultimate goal was to get promoted into the Premiership. So there are occasions that sticking by the manager is the right thing to do. There are the flip side of that, where you look at it from this point of view, and all chairmen, chief executives, they're successful businessmen within their own rights. So they might look at the atmosphere, the environment at the football club, and notice there's maybe a lot of negativity about the training grounds of the football club that wasn't there before. They maybe noticed a change in vibes that they're not too happy with, and that's the reason why they might step in and say, no, there is a drastic change. There are other times, as I said before, sticking by managers, results, yes, it's a results-based business and everybody wants to see their team winning, but it's how they win games or it's how they lose games. You can look at the scenario. I went to the St Mirren and Dundee game, the first game of the season, and I actually thought Dundee played St Mirren off the pitch, but St Mirren came away with a win. So everybody's then looking and thinking, well, Neil McCann, it's a bad start, it's a game you should be winning. But in actual fact, they did very well in the game, and they had a little bit unfortunate with the keeper. Just get caught in two minds, flipped, and someone get the winning goal through that. So, you've got to take different factors into it, and it's not just a case of, right, he's losing games, get shot of him. It is the atmosphere in the training ground or the dressing room. It is even looking at the staff, the motivation that they've got, or a lack of enthusiasm that they've got. Then you can start seeing that things aren't right. But if everything seems well, but you're not getting the results, then it's a case of stick by the guy and give him a little bit more time. But on the other hand, you've got to see where the chairman, the chief executive's coming from, because from a business point of view, looking at how people are within the business, are they looking down, are they looking depressed, or can they get us out of the mess that we're in? And I guess that they look at it from that point of view.
What's the difference, Stuart, from Scotland and England, where obviously the fan base is bigger down there, and obviously if your team's not doing well, then the fans let themselves be heard, they put pressure on the chairman, and then I'm talking maybe something from where you've been at Stoke and Aston Villa, where there's maybe 20-odd thousand season ticket holders, no counting the rest of the crowd, compared to maybe 2,500, 3,000. Do you think the pressure on the owners and the management's just the same, or do you think it's more down south because of obviously the bigger crowds?
Yeah, I think I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of crowds. I think it then becomes intensity, ferociousness of social media is massive now. Yeah. I think it's right. No, honestly, I don't take part in social media.
Wise man.
Well, I probably don't have time to do it, to be honest with you, between trying to, obviously, working and trying to keep learning and progressing myself. But I've got 3 kids, and I thought at any time I go and pick up my phone, it's always with work. I don't actually have time to sit down and start fiddling my fingers about to go and send out tweets, and I probably couldn't do it anyway, to be honest with you. But yeah, certainly that's a massive part to go and play it. You know, supporters go near their opinion. Some stronger than others, and some are actually very sensible in what they've got to go and say. But down there it is very cutthroat, which I've noticed the difference between Scotland and England in that sense, that clubs can afford to pay managers off, whereas in Scotland maybe the clubs do stick by the managers that little bit longer and give them that little bit more of a chance because of the maybe the payoff it may bring, that they can't afford to go and do that. I don't know, but certainly it's more cutthroat.
Well, just the reason why I asked you was, Stuart, because obviously being to St Mirren yourself, the St Mirren fans, I think this season have actually said after last season, the success they had when Stubbs came in, we're a top 6 team, and I think they put a lot of pressure on Stubbs right from the start, believing that they could finish in the top 6. And then you go to Falkirk, where Paul Hartley had signed 17, 18 new players. I don't think the fans actually accept the appointments in the first place, and I think because of the bad results, it resulted in the both of them getting the sack.
I think expectation is probably one of the hardest things to go and handle. You know, where supporters see themselves, see their club, and quite rightly so. Every supporter should want the most for their club, like every manager should do, and every chairman. And I think it's one of those ones where, depending on the success of the previous manager, can certainly make and the new manager's job very difficult. But in some cases it can make it easy, because the previous manager's done that well that the momentum's still there, and the belief is still there, the confidence is still within the dressing room. It's just a case of continuing that, but adding your little your ideas, your philosophy, your stamp to it. So it can work in both ways, to be honest with you. You can be, I'm more of a positive person. I'd always put a positive spin on things. How can you get the best out of every scenario? That's just the way I am. Expectation, it's got to be handled as a manager now. It's not just a case of going and managing the 11 players on the pitch and training them throughout the week. You've got issues of keeping the squad happy, keeping the fans happy, handling that expectation. How are you going to go about doing it? Certainly there's loads of things now in a manager's mind that never used to be there 10, 20 years ago. Yeah,
and probably one of them is, and you probably know this, Stuart, is the kind of some of the players down south, especially in my opinion, kind of throw the rattle out the pram, for the slightest of things, and then the manager's got to try and become a social worker. He's got to keep everybody happy. He's got to try and combine everybody together and make them all, go for the same reason, try and win the game. But some guys just take the cream puff, don't they? Especially down south, I think.
I
know you can't say too much about
that. No, you put me in a position. No, but certainly there's. I've just done my diploma in the League Managers Association for management. Talk about how you handle players, and a lot of it now is how you handle the ego of a player as opposed to the actual player. But that's part of management. That's my opinion. It's part of management. That's your job. We've been players, we know what it's like. It's not great to be left out. It's not great to be out injured. So you've got to go and handle that side of the player and get them picked back up and get them going again. When you leave a player out, why are you leaving them out? I do believe nowadays you've got to speak to players and let them know reasons for letting them out, and the reasons what they've got to go and do to get back into the team again. So it's how you deal with it as a manager. But also, that's what your backroom team staff is for as well. Your assistant, your first team coach. It's unity of your football club, basically, and it's how everybody works together to go and drive things forward and be successful. It's not just a case of it's a manager's job, let him deal with it. No, everybody's got to be part of it, and everybody's got to be successful. everybody's got to be driving the same way and being focused, having that goal and that ambition, and everybody knows exactly what each other's doing.
Stuart, you were mentioning earlier on about how chief executives and chairmen and people like that are businessmen in their own right, and you're absolutely right. And football, it's a business, and it's got to be a business. But have we blurred the lines a wee bit between the business and the sport aspect of it and made it too much of a business and forgotten that it is a sport fundamentally as well? And I know that might sound a little bit old-fashioned, a little bit naive, but we were talking last night, Jerry Collins and myself, we were talking about the amounts of money that's in the game now. We were talking about the amount of people who come into the game from other businesses, because they sometimes, and there's no getting away from it, some people have gone into the business and seen it as a toy, a key fob, to be honest with you. I own a football club. And I'm just wondering if we've blurred those lines too much and how we get the game back on an even keel, because you've got to admit the amount of money that's awash, certainly around, not in Scottish football, but certainly elsewhere, is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think they're spot on. I think that when you look at, I keep going down south, but just because it's a bigger scope in terms of how different clubs are run, that there's so many investment groups, investment companies are coming in to take over football clubs. Now, an investment company is an investment for a reason. They want to make money out of it. It's not a case of we're going to go like an Abramovich and we're going to throw millions at it, and it's just my little toy. I want to have fun, I want to enjoy, I want to go to a football game, and I want to see my team pick up trophies at the end of the season, which clearly is how he looked at it. But you've got obviously the investment group that have went into Will, since we went into it too much, but they are looking, to make a profit out of it. Without going into too much, I've done a case study, and obviously through confidentiality, but they have set out the academy, and it's fantastic. Academy manager down there has stood by the same beliefs and the same ethos as how he wants to go and run the academy, but there's always a case to it at the end, and the case at the end is what profit are we going to make out of it when we sell players on, how much is it costing to run it, but all makes sense because it comes down to pennies and pounds. Nowadays life is too serious. People don't want to throw money away for the sake of it. They want to have something in return. And if that's an Abramovich where it's getting to sit in cup finals and pick up trophies, or if it's more what's happening nowadays of the investment groups coming in and making money out of it. And it does, as you say, it takes an element of, it's a game of football, away, because it puts added pressure on the manager of why not getting results, because our football club is now a brand and we need to sell this brand. And that takes it concentrates more on the business side as opposed to the football side.
Here's where it falls down a wee bit though, Stuart, from a business point of view. Any business wants to know what its costs are and be in control of those costs. And the problem you've got now with football, to a large degree, where the biggest cost base is, they have no control over. Because it's players, and players come and go at different prices and daft prices, and agents and all the rest of it get involved. So you don't have fixed costs. Your costs are variable, and therefore you're never quite sure how you control those costs or whether you've got control of those costs. And so it must be quite difficult. You might have budgets and things like that, and obviously every business does. Sticking to them, I dare say, it's very, very difficult in a club, I would have thought.
Yeah. You're talking about the variable cost. Who knows what a player's going to sell for? He could be one of your academy kids that come through, and it was one of the questions I actually asked and said, well, how do you put a cost on an academy player? And all they do is it as an estimate of what they think the player is worth, and then against players of his age that have been sold on. So that's how they get their estimated cost to turn around whether they're making a profit or a loss, and obviously to work out their budgets. But when it comes down to, you could have two top players at your football club, and top European teams are wanting to buy them. One of them gets injured. That then has a massive effect on your turnover at the end of the year, which is what you're talking about. So it is very much variable, and it is very much something that there is an element of risk at it as well.
That's what I was going to say, because at the end of the day, Stuart, I mean, when we played football, when I started playing football before you, it was a lot easier, I think, for a manager to manage a team. Now there is different egos, there is different things coming into it.
But there was different egos then, Ali. I mean, take wee Jim, for example. You know, there's an ego there. There are egos still in the game today.
I know, but I just think with social media, I think with the way football's progressed, the way...
Well, I think social media is an interesting one because everybody now has a voice and everybody's a critic and everybody's an expert.
Yeah, and
you're absolutely right.
And I looked at the way, Stuart, the way that Brendan Rodgers handled the Dembele situation, and I know he was making a massive profit from it. And guys were rightly so saying, you know, signing for 500,000, getting 19.75 million, whatever. But he handled it properly, and he got rid of it because he knew there would be an atmosphere if he was going to end up staying there, and you know that as well, where it would have created a wee bit of atmosphere between the rest of the players. And it's a result-driven business where the manager can't have any hangers on, creating any bad eggs in his dressing room, Bill. So you've got to move these guys on.
Yeah, I think it's moving on the times, Ali. I think what you're saying back when we played, we didn't have mobile phones. Just taking just taking one element of it. We didn't have mobile phones. Mobile phones is a massive part in the world today. Now you're talking about in a dressing room when mobile phones first came out. All phones were banned in the bus, dressing room, whatever. You know, when you're about the training ground of the club. But you look at your top players now, and as I think I touched on a word earlier on about they're all a brand, and that then feeds that ego of the player. Now, when players become a brand, it's money for them. So straight after the game, the amount of tweets that will go out from your top players, great result today, I'm still sitting in the dressing room, great result, delighted for so-and-so who scored a hat-trick, brilliant, over them in. Now that tweet goes out to millions. Say you're talking Neymar or whoever, that tweet goes out to millions. Now they then get a feedback on that, and that earns them money. So you can't. Years ago, when the phones came in, you used to turn around as a manager or a coach and say, "Put your phone away, it's a fine." You can't fine these lads for doing that because they're a brand. So it then becomes awkward in the dressing room of phones banned or phones not banned, and it's about managing the dressing room. It's about managing the football club. It's about managing your players. It comes back to the manager of what's right, what's wrong, what are you going to let away, because you can get respect or you can lose respect as a manager for that one decision of a phone's banned or a phone's not banned. And that's just one part of it. There's so many other factors to it, of management that we spoke about earlier on in the conversation, that you've got to take all these elements into it, and that's why...
And you know as well, Stuart, you've got to, as a manager or a coach or an assistant manager, you've got to get every single one of the players in that dressing room on your side, because that's what it's all about, you know, and it's difficult if you don't.
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt, I totally agree with you, but there's got to be discipline there, where you can't just say, do that, because I know it's keeping you happy. It's a case of sometimes you've got to, no, I'm sorry. That's
respect as well, Stuart.
Exactly.
But you know, guys, one of the things that I find extremely interesting about this whole conversation, and certainly from a manager's point of view, and Stuart, you're right, it's brands now, and those brands are worth multi-million pounds globally for the bigger clubs especially. But you know, there are so many brand values to that brand, so many platforms that are revenue streams for that brand. Ultimately, the one that, if you like, that drives every other revenue stream is performance. You know, on the park, it's result-driven, always has been and always should be. It should be a meritocracy football. There's no getting away from that. But here's the thing. Because there are so many threads and strands and platforms of revenue now, the manager has got more pressure on him than ever before, because it's not, you could be playing quite well, but you sell a player, or a player goes and part of that brand evaporates, and it starts to hit things like merchandise and various other bits and pieces. I remember either Celtic or it might have been Arsenal started it, had a young Japanese guy or an Asian guy who played only in the reserve team, and Arsenal made a fortune from selling the rights to the TV to China and Japan for having this Asian kid playing in the reserves.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that then comes down to the business side of it, but that then becomes something where the manager then has to have conversation with the chairman and see what's more important for the player not to play, for the player to play. It's like your top go to Asia now to go and play pre-season games, because it brings so much money into the football club, and it improves the brand globally. It's a nightmare for managers, for players, because the amount of travelling and the time difference up until about 10 days before before the season actually starts is a nightmare on that side of it. But the brand then takes over, the football club then takes over, and it's a must be. They have to go to these tournaments and do it.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, because the pressure then goes right back on the manager, as you say, Stuart, So what do you think then? Do you think you have a chairman who owns the club, who's a multi-squillionaire, owns a club, and he's happy as a business side, or you get the guys that want to win trophies, that want to, that will put his manager under more pressure, depending what the brand is? I mean, it's a difficult job for the manager, no matter what. It's really, really difficult for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we were saying earlier on about, it's not just a case of managing 11 players in a dressing room now.
Yeah.
It's and it's managing a football club. And I think that your bigger clubs obviously have people in place like your chief executives that take that pressure, or should take the pressure off the manager, and they deal with all those other factors, outside factors. As a manager, you can only control the controllables. Anything over and above that, there's nothing you can do. You concentrate on what is your job, and it's winning games on a football pitch, progressing players, developing players. On a business side of it, we go on all these courses, we get told what to go and do and what best ways to do this and do that. But that then hands over to the chief executive, and it's the chief executive that has to look at what's more important for us to go and earn that couple of £1 million, improving the brand, and how much effect or bad influence is going to have on results on the pitch.
Yeah, you know what though? That's absolutely right. But there's one thing that's inescapable and happens every time, and that is when there is any problem at a football club where the board are held to account, the first thing they do is chuck the manager under the bus.
I think I don't know if that's the case in every situation, but I think that a lot of people in life like to pass the buck and look elsewhere for blame and shift that responsibility. But whether that's the case at every football club, I don't know.
One of the things that I heard, I know somebody who bought a club, and the club's quite a big club, but that will remain nameless, and so will they. And I remember once having a conversation with them about the manager and various other bits and pieces. And it's a saying that I've used a few times myself now, but his expression was, "You don't buy a piano for somebody else to play."
Well, that's very true.
Who was that again to say that?
Never mind that. Nice try, Graham.
What was that again?
I've got an idea, Stuart.
Listen, Stuart, thanks for being...
I've not got a clue, sorry, Ali. Can you fill me in?
Listen, just going back to that one you're saying about mobile phones. When we were playing, it was the big brick mobile phones. You couldn't get them in your bag anyway. See the phones I've got now. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people thought you were a big brick, or was it brick guy? Sorry,
you thought I was a brick. The goalies thought I was a brick when I papped from the back of the net. Stuart, is that right?
Stuart, listen, thanks for being on with us tonight. A pleasure, and giving us your views on a wee bit of an insight as to what it's really like being on the management side of football these days. Thanks again.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Okay,
Cheers. Thanks again.
Take care.
Thanks. Stuart Taylor there, first team coach for Paul Lambert at Aston Villa and assistant to Paul Lambert at Stoke. You look at it, and I'll tell you what was quite interesting. We were talking about egos for players and managing players' egos, but managers have got egos as well.
Of course they have.
This is where it all starts. Yep. The human element to all of this is fascinating.
Yep.
But it's strange, and I'll tell you something else, which I should have asked him about it, and I was that fascinated with what we were talking about, and I just thought to myself, I should really have asked him about being a number two, being the first team coach, how much pressure, because in a lot of ways, you can be doing your job properly, but the manager gets hunted, and the next thing you know,
you're staying loyal to him.
You're following him at the door.
He's done that a couple of times, hasn't he?
But you know what I mean. And I meant to ask him, but we get so absorbed with everything else.
But it was fascinating, Bill. But being there as players as well, when you know you go through 3 or 4 games without a win, and you're coming off the park, and the boo boys are out, you know. And you look out at the manager, and I've seen a lot of managers come and go. I'm sure there's other guys, Dave and Hugh and that, and Murdo. You see, they're under pressure, severe pressure. But, you know, can you imagine playing for, you know, like say a team with that halt end at Aston Villa where there's maybe 20,000 booing you? I mean, terrible. That's absolutely terrible. And I know it's the same when he gets sacked at St Mirren or sacked at Aston Villa. But just the pressure for the bigger supported clubs. I mean, it must be awful for them for going through a really sticky patch.
Getting sacked for the first time is always the worst one. After that, you take it in your stride. I remember the first time I was bagged from a radio station.
Is that the name I asked you back?
And I thought, what am I going to do here? And I thought, this is ridiculous. I've got a family. I've got a young family. I've got to find a job. And to be fair, and I'm not being funny, but from the time I left the front door till I got to my car in the car park, I had 4 jobs lined up.
Aye.
It meant travelling It meant travelling to another part of the country, but the jobs were there.
Yeah, I think it's a wee bit different for some guys now, isn't it?
Well, in every walk of life, it's totally different. But the interesting thing is that it is the first time that you get bagged, that you take it to heart, and after that you just think, it's an occupational hazard.
I've never been sacked.
No, you wouldn't have been. You've never been in that kind of job, have you,
no,
really?
I've sacked a few people, right enough. I told you. I had to do that. You know what I mean?
Do you want to know what it feels like?
Listen, we need bother. I tell you, I'm a drummer.
A bummer.
I've got a gig lined up. Don't worry about it.
That's only because of what I told you.
I know that. That's why I said it. Obviously, that's why I said it. No, but there
I
you go.
hope
But
Mrs.
I'll tell you
Graham's not
something.
listening.
No, but I'll tell you something. When you walk into training, and even when you're part-time or full-time, and I don't know what happens now, because Stuart's right, it's different now. You get.
Well, I spoke to Jim McAllister last night,
right,
and he was saying about they had done training and everything, and everything was fine with Ray.
Set up for Saturday.
Yeah, everything was absolutely fine. He said, and then later on in the afternoon, we all get told he's away.
I know.
I mean, what can that be like, though?
Well, I've seen it. I've seen managers come and go, but also walked in and been told that you're getting sold or you're moving or we've done a swap deal for you, and you go, what? I'm quite enjoying it here, I don't want to go anywhere. But because the clubs are wanting money or whatever they're getting, you know, they need the dough, you're jolly it off. So it works both ways, Bill. It works both ways. You know, if the managers, the thing is as well, don't forget, down in England especially, you know, if they're a year into their 4-year deal, they're getting millions of pounds. Look at Big Sam, you know, he's made a few quid after getting the bump, isn't he? A few times, so you know it could work both ways, but maybe not as much up here, obviously, because of the money situation, but definitely down south.
I can't read this one out. No, Mark, he hasn't. He said, have you got a gig on a special day of the year as a drummer? No.
I'm only kidding.
He also says, just wondered, Bill, when a team sells off a player, does any of the money go directly to investors? The answer to that would be no. It would go into the club, and then it would be filtered through in terms of dividends paid to investors and shareholders and things like that. But we were talking last night about how agents sell contracts on to other agents that have got a better relationship with a club, and then all these kind of commissions get filtered down. Remember the story about Carlos Tevez, where there were 10 people owned his contract?
Yeah. Ridiculous.
I mean,
and that was that when he went for West Ham to Manchester United?
That's right.
Yeah. And it was money getting branded and talked about all the other place in this guy.
People owned his contract. They actually said there were 10 individuals who had a share of Carlos Tevez.
It's like a racehorse, isn't it? You know.
Well, that's exactly what I compared it to last night.
That is just like a racehorse.
Which I find
connections. You know, it's not your agent, it's your connection. You know, when you get 25 people have got a share in a racehorse, they're connections.
Now, bearing in mind that agents weren't prevalent when you were about.
No, I got them at the end of my career.
Yeah, but I wasn't being funny about that.
Yeah.
But, you know, the situation as it stands just now, would you have preferred to have worked under an agent or having an agent represent you, or were you quite happy?
Well, I moved a lot for no massive money, but 3 or 4 times over 100 grand. So
yeah,
75 grand to 150 grand a few times. So an agent would have suited me. I would have probably earned more money having an agent and getting the same moves. Because then it's quite funny, because sometimes the clubs never even told you how much you were going for before you negotiated what you were going to be getting off them, so. But that's why I'm working away and not going to play golf with Shug in Murdo, because I didn't obviously earn enough money. You know what I mean, Bill? And he just floated about and couldn't get again, but he's playing golf every day. That's all right, huh?
Look, I'm in the same position. I'm in here from crack of dawn till sundown.
Just as well I've got a wee gig, the drummer.
The drummer's gig, yeah.
But no, I think
you're only in it for the fringe benefits, though.
Absolutely. But I think every player now, if you're an asset for a football team, Bill, why would you not use an agent? I think you would. And I told a wee story the weekend there.
Go on. Can you tell this one on air?
Yeah, I can. It's no.
Because Mark says that every story we've got, it says it's okay. The show's full of stories that you can't say. You can tell them later.
No, well, I can't. I can tell the story, but I can't give you the company. But there was something happening at a massive Glasgow football club where teams were coming through for the academy. And the guy was worked in finance and things, and a lot of parents went to him and asked him, listen, we don't really know what's happening with the kids coming through. They're getting offered contracts to go full time. Can you look at it for us and see? And that's how he started his agency, and now he's doing very, very well for himself with that football club. He just took it. He went, there's a gap in this market. I'm going to try this, and he's doing very well now. So that was a bit of a fluke for him, but he's doing well at it, Bill, and that was the reason, because people were asking him for his advice.
And sometimes you do fall into things like that. Yeah. For us little people, we have the union footballers get agents. That's one of his tweets. Poor wee thing, poor wee soul. Listen, SFA bosses are to hold top-level talks with the 3 other home nations over a bid to hold the 2030 World Cup. Do you think they'll have the Hampden-Murrayfield saga actually resolved by then?
No, absolutely not. Did you see the thing I sent you last week with the old Stuttgart Stadium? Did you see the seating?
I did.
Fantastic.
I retweeted it while we were talking.
Yeah. Absolutely fantastic the way they've done that, and Hampden needs revamped to that to bring it into a kind of football stadium where I think it would be, right up there as stadiums go.
Well, Lord Willie Haughey has said that he will foot part of the bill to make Hampden the national stadium and to keep it the national stadium. It's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens with this, but everybody and his wife's getting involved in it.
Well, but they're no. We don't want to get involved in it, but
that's true.
They're not coming out with a decision to let us know what's happening. I mean, what was it they offered Queen's Park? Was it £3.5 million?
No, £2.5 million. £2.5 million. It was reported as £2.5 million. 45
million or something like that.
No, it's on the books at 83 million.
It's 83. I was double that again then. Aye. My God.
83 million.
So no, I don't
but then don't forget there is then development costs for renovation, dilapidation, any upgrade that they make to Lesser Hampden. That would all have to be done by the SFA, you would think, as part of the deal, so that any money that Queen's Park got actually stayed in Queen's Park's pocket.
Yeah. And then you look at...
Not unreasonably.
You look at Murrayfield. Is Murrayfield ready to go, as is?
Murrayfield's a rugby park. I mean, that's what it is. It's a rugby park, and that's what you've got to get your head round. I mean, Celtic have played at Murrayfield, Hearts have played at Murrayfield, and nobody's jumping up and down saying, yes, let's all play at Murrayfield for internationals. Yeah. So it's. Do
you know it's a stadium I've never been to, Bill? Never been to
Murrayfield.
No.
Oh, it's a good stadium, but it's a good stadium for rugby.
Right. Okay.
I went to see. I've been to a few games there, but I went to see Scotland play in England. Was the first time.
But it's a football park. Then are you still the same kind of distance from the playing surface as you are at Hampden?
Well, look, I'll tell you what we'll do before we finish the show tonight, and before Lewis comes on properly, we'll get Lewis in to talk about what the rugby fraternity think about Murrayfield as the new National Football Stadium.
It'd be good to know,
and we'll find out that. While we're talking about football stadiums, let's go to our next guest. Jeanette Findlay's from the Celtic Trust. Of course, over the weekend there was a bit of a crush happened about 20 minutes before the kick-off of the Celtic Rangers game. Supporters tried to make their way into the stadium. There's been calls now, the Celtic Trust, just among some of the people, calling for an independent probe into why this happened. Jeanette, what do you think? And first of all, welcome to the show and thanks for talking to us. But what's the general consensus as to why this happened?
Well, some of things from that day in terms of the new segregation arrangements, the fact that there were approximately 7,000 more Celtic fans attempting to access a smaller number of routes into the stadium, and the fact that it was an early kick-off, and so that the period of time over which people are tending to arrive is more compressed than if it had been, a 3 o'clock in the afternoon game. Mm-hmm. So there are some obvious things like that, but I think for us this requires something in more detail, because in our view, and I don't think we're being alarmist in this, we're very lucky that we're not burying people this week, because there could have been some very, very serious. We've been taking evidence. We've got over 100 very detailed statements. We have photographs. We have videos and so on. And it's very clear that for what was a relatively short period of time, there was some serious crushing going on. Yeah.
But with the best will in the world, it doesn't take long for someone to fall over, other people to fall over them get buried under masses of body.
Absolutely.
We saw a similar thing, of course, back in the 70s at Ibrox with Rangers. Yep. We've seen things happen at other stadia elsewhere. You're right, this could have been catastrophic.
And the thing about those other incidents you mentioned, Hillsborough and so on, are that when you looked back at them, as somebody pointed out to me today, in every case there was a previous near miss. So in order to make sure that this near miss is not ignored in the lessons learned, we think it's vitally important that a proper, robust, transparent investigation is taking place. Independent investigation.
Can I ask you about the elephant in the room, because it is the elephant in the room, and that is the whole thing about the reduction of ticket allocation. Would it, in your view, have made things easier if the ticket allocations that had previously existed had stayed in place?
Okay, let me say two very separate things. The first thing is that Celtic Park is a very safe stadium. We're very proud of that stadium, and we're very clear that it has traditionally been extremely safe, and so we want to make sure that the lessons that are learned from an investigation will return confidence to people that they're attending a very safe stadium. We can also say that we hold this fixture and many other big games where you have a full capacity crowd, and there has never been an issue like this before. Never. However, what we would also say is, regardless of how many or how few tickets an opposing set of fans are given, both Celtic and the police should be able to manage the stadium safely. So in some senses, yes, you can say on that occasion the arrangements were changed and they may have contributed to what happened, but that can't be an excuse. That can't be an excuse. It has to be the case that stadium is safe for everybody, regardless of those arrangements. So I don't think that's the point that people should be focusing on. And in fact, I wasn't really sure what you meant when you said the elephant in the room, because I didn't know which elephant you were on.
Jeanette, was there a communication breakdown with the police, or did they do something, a few days before it, and then they've not followed up with something that maybe, because of what was going on in
well,
the
again, Again, you're asking me to talk about the things that should be part of an investigation. Yeah. But what is clear is that among the things that need to be looked at was, first of all, the character of the initial decision. How that decision was made, what were they thinking about at that time, where the new arrangements risk assessed, all of those kinds of things. But secondly, what would have to be looked at is how the police responded as the situation developed. Mm-hmm. So how did they respond in real time? And I think we are already seeing very clear evidence that they were slow to respond, unlike their own statement where they characterised themselves as being quick to respond, which they most certainly were not. They were not listening to fans when fans were advising them was a problem. In fact, quite the opposite. How they were treating fans was, that they were the problem. Go away, don't bother me. And
this is a familiar story, though. We've heard that in the past.
When you approach police officers in the run-up to a football match, it's unlike any other thing that you might be attending, any kind of either large public event or anything else. When you approach a police officer at a football match, their immediate reaction, is that you're causing a problem by speaking to them. Yeah. It's really palpable. I don't get that in any other part of my life. And I think what is underpinning all of this, and it's a slightly broader question than, an investigation into this particular incident would uncover, but what's underpinning all of this is a tendency for the Police Service of Scotland to have crowd disorder uppermost in their mind when they're planning for games, as opposed to the safety of people attending games. Okay. And I think that's a real cultural problem. It was related to the Offensive Behaviour Act, so even though the Offensive Behaviour Act is gone, that culture hasn't gone, and it needs to go. So I think there needs to be a broader discussion, and I think of the kind of thing that James Kelly's calling for in terms of an independent review of the policing of football matches, which is a separate process from the one we're talking about relating to Sunday's event. But they're connected, I think.
Jeanette, what was it like after the game? Was the reason for the Rangers fans being held in a reason? Was it because what happened before the game to let more people away? Or no,
right. Because what should have happened, in fact, that was we haven't really spoken about that, but there was a problem with that, because what should have happened is that they were supposed to be held for 15 minutes, and then it was completely unrelated to what had happened before. So Celtic fans would then would have discussed that. Would be that. In actual fact, Rangers fans were allowed to leave within about 5 or 6 minutes. Right. So there was some incidents of buses being attacked and so on. So there was one or two, I don't think they were major incidents, but there was one or two, minor clashes which shouldn't have happened. So it's not clear to me, and that still needs to be looked at as well, as to why that was allowed to happen. But and again, that's something that can be very easily managed. They have long experience of doing that. So I think those two things were unrelated. What happened after the game was unrelated to what had happened before it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because yesterday the police held what was described as a thorough and comprehensive debrief with Celtic officials in the wake of this potentially tragic incident. Can I just ask you if the club or the police or anybody else have relayed what came out of that to the Celtic Trust? Number one. Number two, has it, if they have, allayed any fears for the future for you? And are the club behind you in looking to bring an independent probe out?
Okay.
Sorry that there's 3 parts there, Jeanette.
Yeah, that's okay. I've got it all. The club... The debrief that took place yesterday that you're referring to is, I think, the standard thing that happens after all games, I think. So both clubs and the police sit down and they say, okay, what happened right, what happened wrong, that sort of thing. I don't think that was primarily, and couldn't have been really, because there wasn't time to properly examine what had happened. So I think that was more standard stuff that's talked about in those meetings. We met ourselves, and all of the other main sports organisations met with the club on Tuesday night. Now, that meeting had been arranged in advance, and it was initially meant to be about something else. But obviously, given what had happened, the focus of that meeting was then on discussing the events of Sunday, primarily focusing on how was an independent review going to be undertaken. So no, they didn't tell us what was said in that meeting, because it wasn't really about, as I understand it, the detail of what happened.
But how could that not feature strongly when it was such a significant event?
Would have had to have featured. I'm assuming it would have. So that's true. Although we were also offered, Police Service of Scotland wanted to meet with us on the Thursday, and our position is that we want to have the process established first. I think our organisation or any of the other supporters organisations popping in for a wee chat with the police and they say, oh, this is what happened, is really quite good enough. It's really no fit for this set of circumstances. So we've declined the offer to attend that meeting where, possibly they may have discussed some of the things you're talking about, but we've declined that offer because what we want to do is to get in place the process that's going to properly examine this. Now, bear in mind that given there were stewards in that underpass, there will be necessarily, given that this was a near miss, a statutory health and safety examination of that. And that in itself, presumably, and I'm not an expert on that, would involve establishing all of the facts. So there are a number of processes that might be taking place over the next, I'm assuming, I don't even know what the scale would be, but presumably fairly quickly, to establish what happened. Was there a failure of any process? What needs to happen now? So all that the fans are doing just now, the fan organisations that met on Tuesday night, is saying the people who were involved in that must be listened to. Their voice must be heard. Because the Police Service of Scotland have to understand that when a fan approaches you and says, look, there's a problem here, there's a crush building up, you must not treat that person as though they're just a pest to be batted away, or indeed in some cases as they were threatened with arrest. So, there are lots of things to be learned from this, and we're focusing on getting the process right so that none of those lessons are lost.
And are the club behind you in this independent inquiry into why this happened and how it happened? Okay.
The club, insofar as the officers that we met on Tuesday night, they will bring their suggestions back to the board. The club are certainly going to investigate it. There's no doubt about that. What we're talking about is the nature of that investigation. So we're saying it has to be independent, it has to be transparent, clearly has to be robust. They have not responded because that was Tuesday night. We asked them to take that back to the board. Presumably that discussion will go on and they'll come back to us. But certainly we will be very unhappy indeed if the investigation is not what we think would be adequate in order to address the very, very serious nature of what happened with potentially fatal consequences.
And what level of individual do you think be, if you like, driving and holding this independent investigation?
Well, that would be something that would have to be discussed. Some of the ideas that we suggested, possibly bringing up, I don't know, the expert or whatever for maybe an English club or something like that. That was just an off the top of your head idea. There are presumably people who are experienced and knowledgeable in this, and I'm sure Celtic would have no difficulty in establishing who those people are. So we need somebody who will be seen as independent, who will be seen as capable and knowledgeable and able to conduct that kind of inquiry.
And when that inquiry is finished, obviously it's got to be made, you want it to be made public.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It has to be transparent. We have to be absolutely confident, as we have always been, that when we attend any kind of an event at Celtic Football Ground, we will be safe. Now, I have no doubt that the kind of minutiae, what happened, the new segregation, which you could change that tomorrow, you could say, right, that's it. So you could just say, let's change the segregation arrangements back to what they were and let's make the ticket allocation the same. That's it. I don't think that's good enough, because that does not address the fact that when the situation developed, I think both the police and the stewards were found to be inadequate in what they did, or they were certainly slow in what they did. And therefore, if there was another situation, maybe not related to that fixture, maybe not related to changes in segregation arrangements, but some other thing that we can't foresee because they didn't foresee this, then would the reaction times be as slow? So I think lessons need to be learned.
Well, one of the things that you have to ask yourself, though, and I'm not, this is a little bit rhetorical, but one of the things that you have to ask yourself is, with the amount of times that police and stewards are actively engaged in controlling football fans, why the reaction time for any situation would be slow, especially based on past history and experiences.
But they don't need to be controlling us. They need to be safe, managing a large crowd.
Yeah, I use that for better. I use that for want of a better word. It's not the word that I mean literally. But when people talk about it, they talk about crowd control.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the sort of thing. But then I suppose what happens, I suppose it's a feature of lots of other things that can go wrong. When something becomes routine and it always works because we're always safe, because there are never these incidents, I suppose people become complacent, and what you have to do is have some mechanisms in place that guards against complacency. And I don't think that would just apply to football or to crowd situations or to anything else. So when you've got a very well-oiled machine, which is what we have at Celtic Park, a very safe place to be, so many of those stewards will never have been in a situation where they regarded something as being unsafe. Never. In their employment there. But the police should know that, and it should be risk assessed, and there was a change to arrangements, so that should have alerted them to something. And even if it didn't, they should have reacted better when they saw what was happening, because you had police horses at the either end of that tunnel who could see that people thought it safer to try and scale those walls than to remain in the crush situation. That should have triggered a response. And I'm afraid minutes were lost when they didn't do that, and only for the very, very calm and good behaviour of the people in that tunnel who tried to look after people, who tried to sort of form kind of guards around, more vulnerable people, who tried to remain calm and keep the people around about them calm. That could have been a much more serious situation than it was.
Can I ask you a question? Because obviously when you're dealing with a crowd of that size, albeit that it's a portion of it that was involved in the particular incident, but that's immaterial in a way. If that was to have escalated and got more serious, it would have been classed as a major incident and called by the police as a major incident, which would have swung emergency services into operation. Now, for all other areas where major incidents are possible, they have simulated training days where they do these things. Is that something we should be looking at as a matter of course with football crowds?
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, I do
make them occasionally.
Yeah.
Not often.
I'm by no means, in any way, shape or form, an expert on this. I've tried to do a little bit of research over the last couple of days about the legislation on this, the health and safety aspect of it, what should happen. But to be honest, I'm a football fan. I go to the games. I trust that the people who are making these decisions and planning these things have got my safety and everybody else's safety, and that they know that if anything goes wrong, what they would do, and they're all trained. And actually, now I'm less certain of that, and therefore you're absolutely right. I would want to know in detail precisely what they do to prepare for a major incident. Because had any other thing taken place while people were trapped in that tunnel, I'm not really sure how people would have exited the stadium. So let's say they had to clear the stadium. I mean, it would double coincidence there if that had happened. But, who knows what's going to happen? And you have to have plans in place to deal with large crowds. And I've always just assumed that they did.
Well, I think you're right. The other thing as well, Jeanette, is that, you've mentioned you expect to go to a football game as a football fan and be safe and things to work the way that they should. And I'm not being glib by any manner of means with this, because people lost their lives, but people who went to Hillsborough had the same expectation. People who went to Heysel had the same expectation. People who were at Ibrox on that day had the same expectation. We do have to learn from all of these incidents and others. And if a major incident was to be called, they do train tactically for every other major incident that I'm aware of, and I've been involved in some of them. So for me, it makes common sense. And I'm not talking about you do it every 3 weeks or anything, but there should be times when these things are put into operation, and there should be a simulated training day for me.
But I think, Jeanette, I think at the end of the day, Jeanette and Bill, I think at the end of the day, when they know there's 7,000 extra supporters going into that area, something should have been done anyway, Bill. No, after
I'm not arguing with that.
Absolutely. 7,000 people is a major crowd. That's like most of the football clubs in Scotland don't even get 7,000, and there was an extra 7,000 supporters going into that area.
That would be partly what we're calling for, an independent investigation would look at. What decision did they make? What was in their minds when they made that decision? Was it about disorder or was it about safety? When they made the decision, did they risk assess it? What plans did they put in place to manage it? And then the second question, how did they react or not fail to react? What were their, why was it when this was happening and people could clearly see it was happening, why were they not reacting? So all of that has to be discussed, and that's why it's simply enough to say, well, just change the allocation back and change the segregation things back. That won't be enough. That certainly wouldn't be enough for the people whose accounts I've read who are utterly terrified with our children, with our elderly people, with people with varying levels of disability who are in that crowd. It won't be enough to say to them, oh, it's fine, we'll just go back to what we used to do. They will need to know more than that, and they'll need to be reassured more than that, and it's in all our interest to do that. So I can't see that Celtic will be in any way resistant to, they need to this, and they need to get, the confidence back in that stadium, and exactly, for the same reasons as everybody else. So I have no expectation of any resistance for Celtic on this. It is in their interest, it is in our interest to make sure that everybody's safe and that everybody is confident that they will be safe.
Well, I have absolutely no doubt that with you guiding, along with others from the Celtic Trust, this to get this independent inquiry, that everything possible will be done to ensure that it happens and is as transparent as possible. And I look forward to finding out whether you do manage to get it and what the results are. Listen, thank you very much for coming on and talking to us tonight on the programme. Very much indeed. Thank you, Jeanette. There we go. Jeanette Findlay from the Celtic Trust talking to us tonight about the ground safety and the incident that happened at Celtic Park at the weekend. And, you can't argue with anything Jeanette said. Let's be honest about it. In fact, there's a couple of Rangers fans that have come on and they've said, I have to agree with Jeanette regarding police attitudes. Even as a wheelchair user, I felt like a piece of dirt when asking for assistance in something. Treat every fan as if they're hooligans, I think. Somebody else, I'll agree with the guest that one of the biggest problems is just not football. It's the way police and stewards act with people. They tend to ignore concerns or shun anyone who approaches them. So it's interesting that there's this could have been a major incident.
And you know yourself, and
the loss of life.
Yeah, and I've experienced it as well, Bill. I mean, you've been to games where there's been over 100,000 people getting in. I think the one that I was at the most was, I think it was about 132,000 at the Old Hampden. And in those days, of course, you didn't have seating and things like that. Standing.
It was very steep terraces. And I've seen, as we all have, we've seen bits of various things where crushed barriers on the old terraces were bent out of shape. Yeah,
well, I've only experienced it, not to that crowd, but I mean, the kind of 90,000 odd at Hampden where have actually been carried kind of out when people have been leaving and your feet aren't even on the ground when you were younger.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
It's frightening, absolutely frightening. There must have been a few people, a lot of people, terrified with that situation.
Okay, a couple of bits and pieces still coming in. Andy, the photo doctor, I have a healthy respect for the police, but it's a point regarding their attitude at matches. It's almost as if fans are dehumanised for liking football. Not every fan is a scumbag. Ben, simulated training days are a priority. I've seen these in action, and they prepare to work. They prepare and work very, very well. Right, okay, got that one. It's a personal point of view, so we'll leave that. We'll see what happens, because you know it's not going to go away, and neither should it, because if it goes away, we ignore the lessons of history. You know, we ignore what happened in the 70s at Ibrox. We ignore what happened at Hillsborough. We ignore what happened at Heysel. You know, and there's no way that we can afford to do that.
Absolutely
it is not acceptable in any way, shape or form. So we'll wait and see what happens, and thanks to Jeanette for coming on and talking to us tonight. Now, we've been talking a lot about it tonight, about the way that the managerial roundabout has kind of, well, thrown a few managers off. One of them is Barry Smith, who resigned from Raith Rovers, the board reluctantly accepting his resignation. Just as Raith Rovers sit joint top of the table, and after a 4-0 win over Forfar at the weekend. Matthew Elders from the Fife Free Press. Matthew, this is like a whodunit.
Yep, hi. The board, a bit like myself, were caught completely off guard by this yesterday. They weren't expecting it. And this timing is very strange, as you mentioned, with the team just on the back of a 4-0 win and top of the table. So, the club's kind of been rocked a little bit.
The rumour mill is always going, 10 a penny in the world of football. As a journalist myself, I hear stories every day, and you have to sift through the good, the bad and the ugly. But is there anything coming out from anywhere that in any way seems credible? And if so, what is the story?
I've kind of had vibes from Barry, certainly for a while, that things haven't been particularly smooth behind the scenes. He's had certain issues with having mixed messages from the board in terms of how much money he can spend. He's maybe been given a budget, and then thinking he's been able to sign a player, made an offer to a player, and then had to withdraw that offer because the money that he thought he was getting wasn't actually there. And I think that's maybe happened to him in the last couple of windows, and I think it's certainly the window just as well. I think he also had the impression that he maybe wasn't flavour of the month with all the board. He had quite a close working relationship with the chairman. I was speaking to the chairman today, and he was very shocked and taken aback by it, because he felt he had a strong relationship with Barry, but I'm not sure that was the case for all the board members at the football club.
When you were interviewing him, Matthew, after the game Saturday, I presume, did they show you any indications of anything? He wasn't happy, or was he just delighted with the 4-0 win?
Yeah, he was just as delighted as Barry ever is.
Difficult one. That's a difficult one, I know.
But I mean, no, he was perfectly fine after full time. Yeah, there was certainly no indication, and I was actually at the stadium on Tuesday when it all happened. And he went into the office with the chairman. At the time, I was standing in the tea room waiting to speak to him. I have a weekly chat with Barry on a Tuesday, and they asked me to speak to Kevin Cuthbert, the assistant, instead, and I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought he was taking a week off, or he had to speak to the chairman about something, but that was actually him taking the chairman into his office to hand him his resignation letter, which came out just a few hours later.
I know there's really never a positive when something like this happens out of the blue, but if there is to be a positive taken from it, at least a manager who comes in is not up against the wall. I know it's early in the season, but he's not coming in and finding a team that's struggling or fighting, which, as I say, is a bit of a positive, but not much comfort.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it is an attractive job in the sense that Raith are the big fish in that division. They've got a very small squad, but I think they've shown in the last couple of games that they've got a good squad there. and one that certainly should be good enough to win the league if they avoid injuries. The problem Raith have got is that their squad is so short this season, and that was another one of sort of Barry's issues, I suppose, that he wasn't able to bring in as many players as he would like this season, and that's already been reflected in some of the early season games where he's not been able to fill a bench. He's had two outfield players, both of which are players at times. But the last couple of games, they've had players coming back from injury, and certainly the coming back from 3-1 down at Airdrie to win 4-3 in the last 5 minutes with 10 men. I think that showed at least that the players were certainly playing for Barry and for the club. So yeah, there's an attractive enough job there for somebody if they're able to come in and do what Barry obviously failed to do and work with the current board.
That's what I was going to ask you as well, Matthew. The Airdrie game where they come back and scored late on to win that with 10 men, I was kind of thinking to myself that might have been the last straw for Barry, and I don't know if I'm out of order with saying that, but before I found out that obviously they scored 2 late goals, but were you thinking the same, or did the fans thinking the same before the amazing turnaround to get the points, because you'd only won one game before that one, hadn't you?
Yeah, I think that was certainly the feeling among the fans. And the fact the board are certainly in tune with what the fans are thinking. So I mean, at 3-1 down at Airdrie, I think there was a possibility that Barry's coat might have been on a sugarier peg, but I think that would have been a little bit harsh, given that we're still early in the season. And like I say, he's had these injury problems to deal with, but the fact that he's come back from that position. 3-1 down to then win 4-3 and win the following game 4-0, things were starting to look up again, and it was actually almost as if they turned a corner in that game this season. And that's why the timing of this has just come as such a surprise, because had Barry lost that Airdrie game and then resigned, you could almost understand it a bit better, but certainly the club have been taken aback by the timing.
Matt, I have to say, we've all been around football for long enough, you, me, Ali, and we know how it works. So it's a question of the king is dead, long live the king. The names must be floating around already in terms of a replacement for Barry Smith. Who are the ones that you think are in the frame that are credible? Well,
there's a number of experienced managers out of work at the moment. It's whether they would maybe fancy taking his job, because some of them have maybe worked at a slightly higher level recently. You've got obviously Jim Duffy, who a few fans have mentioned certainly, who did a good job at Morton, and they just chose to go a different direction in the summer there. You had Peter Houston as well, who certainly was doing particularly well at Falkirk for a number of years before that sort of went a bit sour. So there's certainly names there that would probably attract the fans. Whether these names would be attracted to the club in League One, another matter.
But what about Ray McKinnon coming back, Matt? You don't think that would maybe happen?
A week after going to Falkirk. Aye, that'll be right.
Rule nothing out with Ray McKinnon, I think.
Ali, you spent time and happy times at Raith Rovers. Give us a bit of an insight with the club from your point of view and who you think would be the ideal man. What about somebody like Yogi?
Yogi's been there, hasn't he? Yeah, hasn't he? That went down well, Matt, didn't it?
No, I think I think that ship has definitely sailed. Yogi obviously came in after Gary Locke, and things went from bad to worse, unfortunately, there, and ended up relegated. So I think that's the key thing, that there is good harmony in this Raith dressing room. They've got a squad that are playing for each other, and they were definitely playing for the manager. The comeback against Airdrie shows that. So there's a squad that just needs somebody to come in and build on what's there. That doesn't need sort of major overhaul or anything. It just needs somebody to come in and keep that harmony going. Someone with experience, I think, would probably be able to come in and do that.
See, the club's changed so much since I was here, and it's building.
All right,
the stands weren't there, but they've also got down the artificial surface now.
That's right. But I mean, who do you think yourself? Do you
think fans would be happy with? I don't know. I think it's obviously down to the man that pays the wages, you know. Does he go with a guy that's maybe inexperienced and trying, you know, it's maybe just left football, it's maybe looking for a wee turn there? I know Kevin Cuthbert taking over.
This is your favourite road at the minute. Absolutely. Or do the fans want somebody that's tried and trusted? Are the same old faces that move around Scottish football? You know, do I think guys like Jim Duffy, I like Jim, would he take it? I don't think so. You know, other guys that have been about, Jim McIntyre, we think Jim's maybe got one lined up, you know, so, you know, there's the usual suspects, isn't it? So, I don't know, I just think maybe... Well, who do you think would be an ideal fit?
Me? I'll give you one right now, and I'm waiting on Matt saying me. Massimo Donato would take the job, no problem. So there's one for you.
Okay, that'd be an interesting one in Kirkcaldy.
Absolutely. There you go. So you asked me to give you a name and I've given you one. He's looking for a job.
You threw his hat in the ring for something else the other day. You sure you know his new agent?
Matthew, would you take him?
Who was that, did you say?
Massimo Donati's looking for a job.
Donati, I think that would be a risk.
Right.
I'm not sure about that. I would quite like to, if it was up to me, I would quite like to get a manager who is on the up, like what they did with Ray McKinnon, sort of cut his teeth at part-time level and is looking to make the step up to full-time.
Yeah.
You've got Stuart Taylor doing really well at Montreal.
All right, forgot him,
season. That's a possibility there. Obviously, you'd have to buy out his contract. You've got Jim Goodwin as well, who has really impressed me, what he's done with Alloa. But obviously he's in the league above now, possibly interested in St Mirren, so... that's the kind of route I'd be going down. Someone who's emerging and just looking to maybe take a step up.
Yeah. So would it be easier then, Matt, to take someone that's actually out of work at the minute because they would need to pay the compensation to some other clubs? That
would be the easier thing for the club to do, which is why I mentioned guys like Duffy and Houston, which who are out of a job, but whether the job's attractive enough to names like that at the moment, I doubt it. But
And what kind of pressure do you think the manager would be under? Is this the season that the fans expect him to go up this season?
They expected him to go up last season. There's huge pressure at race to get promoted, and although Barry Smith missed out by effectively the width of a post, because that's all it was on the final game of last season. Lewis Vaughan hit the post, and in fact they got promoted as champions. And because they failed to get promoted, there was actually a lot of pressure on the board during the summer from the fans to sack Barry Smith. That is the pressure. It's promotion or you've failed. So any manager coming in will probably made aware of that.
How have Wraith Rovers kept pace, though, in terms of, you know, this is a club that played in Europe. They've got a great history. They've had some illustrious names playing for them. And now they find themselves where they are. I mean, are Wraith Rovers really now still geared up to be a top championship club, Matt?
That's certainly the ambition of the current board and the owner. And installing, they've just splashed out £700,000 on what is the best artificial surface in Scotland.
Every club that's got one says that.
Yeah, I say that. But it's certainly better than ones such as Livingston and things like that have been getting a lot of criticism. But I think this one's been getting a lot of praise from all the players that have played in it so far. But so they're trying to get some infrastructure in place, but the problem they've got is that money is just so tight, especially in League One, that they're almost cutting their nose off to spite their face at times. They need investment to get to where they want to be, but they just can't afford it. And this money for the pitch has been ring fenced for a long time. That was never available for the playing side. But they need to find money to invest in the playing side and in the club infrastructure. Obviously, they got rid of their chief executive last year, Eric Drysdale, in a sort of money-saving exercise. But it's left the football admin side way behind the times as well now. So there's a fair bit of catching up to do before they become what you would say a strong championship club again.
What's the projections in terms of revenue stream from the new artificial pitch? I'm assuming that they've made this decision and invested in it with a very clear idea of what the return will be and how long that return will take. So what are the projected figures for this in terms of being able to recoup the money and make some money as well?
Yeah, you would think that these financial projections would have been available and made public, but they've not come out with anything regarding what they think that the financial benefits will be. It's almost been based on assumptions and advice from other clubs who've gone down this route. Mm-hmm. They've obviously provided them with their figures, and clubs like, I think they took a lot of advice from Queen of the South and Falkirk, who were very positive about their move from grass to artificial and the benefits it's brought. So I think that's where Raith have gone. The club owner, John, is not actually based in Scotland. He works in Thailand, but it's kind of been his vision almost for the club since he came in to turn it into a community facility. I think he got frustrated at the fact that Stats Park would sit 6 days a week empty, not getting used, and that's where it's all basically come from. Him just trying to open up the club to the town, open up the stadium to the town. But again, there's infrastructure issues there. They don't have changing facilities, adequate changing facilities at the moment for if you wanted 7-a-side to start there or things like that. So there's a lot still to be done. And a lot of attention has been put on the pitch at the moment, probably to the detriment of other areas. So we really need to use this chance to sort of refocus their energies on the football side of things, I think.
And obviously as well, Matt, they'll be saving money. The first team in the reserves training on the park every day and at night and that kind of thing.
The team was training at a Fife Council facility at the Michael Wood Centre up in Glenrothes. They've moved back down to Kirkcaldy now, so there is an element of a saving there. How much, I'm not convinced there's a massive saving.
Yeah.
That's one part of it. And they've got the ladies team playing there. They played their first game at Starts Park over the weekend, and that brought a couple of hundred people into the ground. So there's all these sort of things as well. And
what's the gates like at the minute? What are they getting through the gates for to support the side?
Yes, the crowd on Saturday was just under 1,500, I think, which is roughly their average. I mean, they're not really sitting below or above average at the moment. You would say that's kind of average for Raith, certainly at League One.
And of course you have the problem with the away support. I mean, I take it there'll not be many sides filling that stand up the other end of the park.
No, not at all. They're not even in that stand at the moment. They're just accommodating away fans in the main stand. So
yeah.
They've got a 3,500 seater stand sitting empty at one end of the ground, which is another issue. There's so many issues with the stadium that need resolved. I mean, the pitch is only phase 1.
Here's one for you guys. Just come in. Liam Telfer sent this one in on a tweet. What about Robbie Nielsen for the Raith job?
Yeah, I would definitely take Robbie based on the achievements elsewhere, but I don't think you'd be interested, if I'm being honest.
I think you'd be looking for a bigger fish, Matt.
I think you'd be looking for a bigger fish,
yeah. So there'll be names out there that obviously the supporters will be wanting in.
Here's a thing to think about, guys. We've heard about clubs, Morton being one of them, where they had like over 100 applicants, and a couple of them were ex-World Cup winners. So you just never know. People are so, they're desperate to get back into work, and other people want to get their first gig and all the rest of it. It's a question of what Raith Rovers are looking for, what their expectation level is, and of course what their budget is as well.
That's exactly it, Bill.
So it's all going to come down to those kind of things. But, I'll tell you what they don't want to do. They don't want to lose the traction that they've got sitting at the top of the table, Matt.
No, that's that was my point earlier. They really need someone just to come in and pick up the reins. Barry's left. In terms of certainly the last two results, I've got the season really, really on track. And I think fans were really starting to look ahead with a lot of optimism after a fair bit of negativity after failing to get promoted during the summer. A pretty poor Betfred Cup campaign where defeats to Cowdenbeath and Cove Rangers really had some concerns raised. Then a couple of draws to start the league campaign as well didn't go down particularly well. But just the last year, you just felt that the optimism was coming back. The performance on Saturday against Forfar, Forfar are no mugs this season. They were sitting third in the table before the game started. It was Raith's best performance for a number of months. They were dominant in all areas of the park. So I think after that, we're just really looking forward with, like I say, a lot of optimism, and then everything's flipped on its head on Tuesday.
All right, well, maybe we'll talk to you again when we hear who is appointed or who might be appointed.
And just on that, Bill, Matt, when are they going to advertise for the job, or have you heard anything? Because I think they would want to do things fairly quickly, although Cuthbert's in charge this weekend.
Cuthbert's in charge on Saturday. They had a board meeting last night. I don't think any shortlist has been drawn up or anything or like that. Their main focus at the moment, I think, is just on preparing for Saturday. I'm imagining they'll need to involve the owner at some point, John Sowell. He's not in the country, so it might not be as quick as fans would maybe like it to be, but certainly I don't see any movement before the weekend. I think that there'll possibly be a board meeting at the end part of next week, maybe, where they'll start to look at a shortlist.
Okay. Thanks again, Matt. That's great for updating us on the situation at Raith Rovers. Matt Elder from the Fife Free Press telling us about the overall feel about the departure of Barry Smith. We'll take a quick break and then we'll come back and we'll talk some more football.
Love music, live sport. Talking football with Bill Young and Ali Graham on RockSport Radio.
Okay, just coming up to the end of the programme. Before we do, though, and before he gets stripped off into his first team kit, Lewis Stewart with the line out, doing all he can for the game of rugby in the way that we do for football. We said earlier on that we'd talk to Lewis and just find out what the rugby fraternity were thinking about the prospects of us heathens taking over Murrayfield. Lewis, what's the general view of rugby fans? Because Murrayfield is the home of Scottish rugby.
Oh, totally the home of Scottish rugby, and they obviously feel very passionate about the way it is and the way it's looked after. On the whole, I don't think that there is a huge groundswell amongst the rugby community that go to Murrayfield one way or the other about what happened. They appreciate that as far as the SRU is concerned, this is going to bring them lots of extra money if it happens. It's going to produce more income that's going to be developed into rugby.
Can I just stop you very quickly? It's going to bring lots of extra money. This is a body that's offered £2.5 million to Queen's Park for an asset that's on the books for Queen's Park at £83 million, and you're expecting a lot of money from the SFA.
Yeah, well, they've been promised a reasonable whack. I think it's going to be done, as I understand it, on the basis of rental per game that they pay, however much. But certainly they're expecting a decent seven-figure sum that can be reinvested into rugby. The big problem is not so much the rugby community, but the Edinburgh community, if you like, the people around the stadium and the people a bit further out who are likely to be affected by the crowds coming in. And you're back into the usual stereotypes of people wondering and feeling that the football crowds are going to be a lot rougher, less well behaved than the rugby crowds. There was a complaint this week comparing the behaviour at the rugby games, for example, to what happens when they put rock concerts on at Murrayfield, and people saying that when you get that different audience coming in, that it is going to be a different atmosphere around the place. The rugby community traditionally have had people who've come in, they've mingled, they've mixed, people from opposition, that sit next to each other, fans, share beers, although they're wearing opposition colours, which is something that simply doesn't happen in football. And it's something I think that a lot of the people living within probably half a mile, maybe a mile of Murrayfield are more worried about than the people who live further away and come to Murrayfield only for games.
What I disagree with is the fact that that we're not used to getting beers at football matches anyway, Lou, so I wouldn't mind actually going to a game and getting a pint and sharing it with a supporter that sits next to me. So we'll say no to that. Absolutely not. I understand where Lewis is going, Bill, but you're still going to have the same travel problems. People moan about Hampden Park with travel problems. People getting in Mount Florida, getting buses and taxis for Glasgow, trying to get back out as well. So I think you're going to still have the same problems in Edinburgh as well.
Well, same travel problem. The one thing I will say about Murrayfield is that these days it is actually pretty well served for as far as travel. Of course, it's got a tram stop right next to the ground, so as long as there are enough trams running, it's very easy to get large numbers of people in and out. On Six Nations days, and the recent times, the November internationals as well, when they've had the crowd completely full, 68,000 people odds, they've been able to get people in and out without any major problems, and they are well experienced. The police are well experienced on this. Maybe slightly different when you're talking about football, particularly if you're looking at things like Old Firm games.
Absolutely.
And then you've got to worry about segregating the people coming into the ground much earlier than they're used to. And of course, I mean, segregation is simply something has never happened as far as Murrayfield is concerned in the past.
I think that's the answer, Bill.
A lot of people as well are saying that this has really just been a kind of paper exercise for the SFA, that they've never had any real intention of moving from Hampden. They've used Murrayfield as a pawn, if you like, to manipulate the situation with Queen's Park. But I get the impression that Murrayfield have put quite a lot of time, effort and money into this to make a case for it.
Oh, they certainly put a lot of effort into it. That they've had a team devoted to it for the last 8-9 months or so, and people... They're not just putting together. There was the YouTube video they put out last week. There was the presentation.
It was an advert. Wasn't it? They made an advert about it, Lewis, as well. Yeah. So, yeah,
they've done all that sort of marketing exercise to sell themselves, not so much to the SFA, I think, but to sell themselves to the football community in general, to try and persuade people who have never been to Murrayfield, who sort of see Murrayfield as a sort of totem of an elite privileged game. It is actually somewhere that is perfectly capable of hosting a football match. They want to try and change perceptions. And it's partly, I think, as well, the part of it as well is actually not just changing perceptions about Murrayfield, but changing perceptions about rugby as a sport. Trying to get rid of this image of rugby as being only for the elite and only for the wealthy, and saying it is, for the people coming out of places like Castlemilk and places like that. They can go to Murrayfield, they can have a good time, they can enjoy themselves, despite its history and its background.
Right, 1 to 10, Lewis. 10 being absolutely certain, 1 being absolutely no chance. 1 to 10 on your thoughts of Murrayfield becoming the new home of Scottish football.
2, maybe, probably 1. I would agree with you, Bill. I think that the SFA are basically having an alternative that they can put the frighteners on Queen's Park.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And I think the more... Very quickly, Lucy, don't reply to this one, but the wags that we've got listening to this programme. Bill, can you ask Santa if I can get a bike for Christmas?
Short answer, if he's a good boy.
There's always one. That's it for me with you. I'm back tomorrow. He's with you right after the news with the line out.
Love music, live sport. Talking Football with Bill Young and Ali Graham on RockSport Radio.